My guest this morning is Jessie Gomez, a reporter for Chalkbeat, a nonprofit news organization covering education. We have, as you know, Jessie, a very tight governor race here in New Jersey. Democrat Mikie Sherrill, Republican Jack Ciatterelli. You just recently wrote an article on this for Chalkbeat. What if you had to pick one issue that they really stand out from each other on? What would that be?
Yeah, I think definitely student achievement. And when we talk about student achievement in general in the education space, it's a really big topic. Obviously, we're 5 years post pandemic, and we're looking to state and local leaders to make sure our kids are getting back on grade level. And so, what's really interesting with student achievement when it comes to both of these candidates, Mikie Sherrill and Jack Ciatterelli, they have very different views at how they would approach it, how they would help students get, recover from the pandemic, and even the types of offerings they would give parents in terms of school choice are also very, very different. So when we talk about, again, the gubernatorial race and education, both very contrasting topics and very contrasting platforms.
You mentioned the pandemic, and obviously we're about 5.5 years removed from it. But how much of the effects of that are we still feeling here in New Jersey in the education system?
Yeah, so let's zoom into Newark Public Schools, New Jersey's largest school district. One of the biggest indicators of student recovery is really state test scores. And so, although there are other metrics, that's sort of what we can see year over year and the year over year change. Since 2022, the first time New Jersey students took the state standardized test post pandemic, we did see scores dip below 2019 levels, which is really concerning because that means there will be a lot of academic needs in reading, academic needs in math. And so now 2025, 5.5 years later, we're still seeing level like state test scores below 2019 levels. We've been seeing in the public school system in Newark, two percentage point increase year over year, which is great because students are increasing in that, in that metric, but we're still seeing that they need a lot of help.
As I mentioned to you before we came on the air, my wife was a teacher in the New Jersey public school system here in Morris County for many years. And I know that test scores in her district went down. And we're not just talking Newark here, we're talking a suburban New Jersey district in Morris County. So it was a very wide ranging effect.
Yeah, and it really impacted, again, not just Newark, not just suburban counties, but really the whole country. And so what we're seeing again across the country is that students really need help in just refining their skills. They know the basics, they know the foundations, but now it's, well, how do we help them and how do we fine tune what, students really need academically?
One of the things that I noticed in your article is both Mikie Sherrill and Jack Ciatterelli talk about high impact tutoring. And I think Jack Ciatterelli referred to a high impact curriculum as well. How do the two of them differ on the approaches to that, Jesse?
Yeah, so this is again very interesting to talk about when it comes to elections. So, Mikie Sherrill, a Democrat, she is proposing high impact tutoring, which is basically a research based approach that says students should have tutoring 3 times a week with the same tutor. And the frequency and the intentionality behind that differs from, or just regular tutoring, perhaps as, other students might have had in previous years. This is a really type of intentional tutoring. And so Mikie Sherrill has said that she's worked on this at the federal level and she plans to bring that to New Jersey. The big question here, though, is, if we start offering high impact tutoring to all of our more than 500 school districts across New Jersey, how will, a future governor pay for that? So that's sort of the big question there. When it comes to Jack Ciatterelli, he is also looking to implement high impact tutoring as well, but also with an emphasis on high impact curriculum. So again, sort of this idea where you bring in a very intensive curriculum, a very focused and specific curriculum into schools that's based on a set of research based approaches. And so that's kind of where he sort of aligns to that as well. I think the other side of the coin too here when we talk about academic recovery is giving parents school choice. And when we talk about school choice, that's another can of worms. And both candidates also have different views on that.
Yeah, and referring there to charter schools, which I think have affected the landscape of traditional education. What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, I mean, when we talk about charter schools and private schools and school vouchers, that's sort of a very heated topic in the education space as well. Folks like Ciatterelli, who have a more of a rightward approach, are for school vouchers. And we know that, Ciatterelli has said that he would implement a voucher like system, sort of modeled after Florida's state. So basically, again, the state would give parents X amount of money to help them go to a private school of their choosing, which, for some parents that works, for others that may not. There's also, conversations and discussions among experts in the education field that it might be a costly approach and it might, also segregate students further than what we've already been seeing in New Jersey. So that's sort of like where Ciatterelli stands. And Mikie Sherrill's approach when it comes to school choice is really to expand the interdistrict public choice program, which is a new program in New Jersey that allows parents from different counties to basically send their students to other counties outside of like their home district. A great approach, but in a school in Essex County, Essex County is not a participant of that. So again, the question there is also, well, how would Mikie Sherrill, expand this program, and how would Jack Sherrill fund vouchers? Big questions.
One of the other topics that came up in that piece that you recently wrote was cell phones.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think I have a different opinion of them. I know they can be a distraction in school, but I'll give you an anecdote. I remember being in third grade, and I was wondering when it came to math, because we had so many boys in the class and we were all into baseball, why didn't they teach us how to do batting averages? This was something that we were really into. And I'm thinking, I'll bet if this teacher did this, a lot more of us would want to pay attention.
Yep.
So I'm wondering if cell phones, while yes, they can be a distraction, I get it. But given the fact that these things aren't going away anytime soon, is there a way to integrate them into the education system rather than say, turn them off, put them in this bin? You can get it at the end of the day.
I think that's like a great point that you make. And I think that's something that experts are sort of like, thinking about, well, like how do we make instruction in general more entertaining and more effective and more engaging? Again, the attention span of a student today is a lot different than it was 20, maybe even 10 years ago. And that's thanks to, again, cell phones and social media. Well, at the state level, there's been a lot of research and a lot of intentionality and focus on, whether there should be a bell-to-bell ban or not in schools. Basically, just no cell phones during instructional hours. There's a commission at the state level that recently released a report in September that basically recommends a bell-to-bell ban, no cell phones in the classroom. And that's just because there have been reports also that teachers have said, like, we just need these students to pay attention, and cell phones are a big distraction. So it's, again, teachers want to do their jobs and students need to learn. So I think a lot of what the state here is recommending is just let's get the cell phones out of there.
Again, Jessie Gomez, a reporter for Chalkbeat, a nonprofit news organization covering education. You can find it online at chalkbeat.org/Newark is where you can see Jessie's articles. You can also follow her on Twitter, X, whatever you're calling it, at Jessie Report. Jessie, thank you so much for your time this morning here on Jersey Magazine.
Thanks so much, Jim. Appreciate it.